I think that the purpose of governance ideally is to assist the CEO in creating an environment that involves not only the shareholders, but the stakeholders and the workers. And what I mean by that is that there should be a plan in which all employees are allowed to thrive to the best of their ability. Because what we do know is that when you give employees a fair or living wage, when you inspire employees with a mission, when you give their life meaning through their work, that they will work much harder, be much more dedicated than in any other instance. In fact, it doesn't even matter what you pay them, in the sense that they will work harder for you, even for less pay, if you respect their dignity and create an environment that makes them feel good about themselves, feel good about the work they're doing, and also feel good that they're able to take care of their family and their personal needs. And this is a challenge because oftentimes the leadership of corporations are more interested in profit and how to maximize that profit with minimal outlay of expenses or expenditures. And when that is the focus, people suffer, employees suffer. And at the end of the day, the corporation suffers because when you create environments that are extractive, then this leads to disengagement of the employees. It actually leads to a decrease in creativity, a decrease in productivity, an increase in healthcare expenditures because of the stress and anxiety that's created. It increases human resource costs because individuals who are treated in this manner typically will not take promotions and will always be looking for another job because you have not given them anything for which they should be loyal to you for. So the hidden cost of disregarding the contribution of employees or diminishing their importance or creating an environment that removes their dignity or takes away their dignity actually is the worst thing you can do in terms of corporate prosperity. And certainly on the short term, when you create fear and anxiety, you may get a burst of productivity, but this is very short-lived and will come at an extraordinarily high cost. I think that good governance actually is the same in many ways as being a good human being. When you look at the world through the lens of oneness and see the other as yourself, then you make right decisions. When you look at your employees as human beings and not as replaceable entities, you make the right choice. Every human being has the right to dignity. Every human being has the right to a fair and living wage. Every human being should be given the opportunities to maximize their potential, and they should be respected. Certainly, whether it's the Bible, whether it's in the Upanishads, whether it's the Buddhist texts, all of these talk about essentially human connection and how when people are connected, they prosper. But that means that there has to be that connection. Human dignity means you look at the other as an equal. You don't look down on the other. And that's one of the challenges in many corporate environments. You see the exhibition of jealousy, envy, greed in the leadership, and oftentimes the boards represent the same thing. So I think that until we look through the lens of how we can all benefit, not only the shareholders and stakeholders, but the employees and everyone else involved, a company will not be as successful as they could be. Well, I think there are many reasons. The nature of our evolution as a species is one in which our offspring need to be cared for a decade or significantly more. And this requires us to be attuned to whether they're hungry, whether they're suffering, whether they're in pain, and respond to that. And the benefit of responding is that they're the release of neurotransmitters that stimulate our pleasure and reward centers. As we evolve to a tribal environment, which is how we lived to up until 6,000 to 8,000 years ago in groups of less than 150, the same rules apply, because if the tribe did not care for the other, it put the tribe at risk. So there was overall benefit to doing appropriate behaviors that benefited the tribe or the community. The challenge became, once you got over that 100 or 150 number, which is called Dunbarton's number, and some may argue about whether that's true, but I think most people believe that at some number, it is hard to observe everyone and know what everyone is doing or know everyone by their first name. And what this does is then it leaves people, frankly, unsupervised or not being watched closely. And then this often will lead to behaviors that are inappropriate. So having an environment where there are rules and people follow the rules typically motivates or stimulates others to follow the rules. When people have the opportunity to cheat, oftentimes they will if they believe they can get away with it. Interestingly, some people would argue that that's the origin of religion. As an example, if individuals feel that there is an omniscient being that is overseeing all of their actions, and that in the future, if they don't conform to the set of moral, ethical values or the rules, they'll be punished, then for many people, that is enough to motivate them to make the right decisions. Additionally, it has a secondary benefit, because we are the only species that have a perception of our finite existence. So if you combine the two, a belief that you'll be rewarded for the right decisions or moral, ethical decisions, and by doing so, you will be given everlasting life, then that is a motivator, again, to follow the rules. You can also put this in the context of karma, where if you don't lead a moral, ethical life, you'll be punished in the next life. And so all of these narratives or myths or stories are for the purpose of motivating us to be our best selves. The challenge with human beings, unfortunately, is that through different types of influences, they can be motivated to not be their best selves. And then, of course, what happens is that because of the cognitive dissonance between their immoral or unethical behavior, they have to create a narrative that justifies their behavior. Otherwise, they could not do it. And then that can be translated into narratives such as the employees don't work hard enough, or I'm doing them a favor by giving them a job, and if I didn't do it, they wouldn't have a job. If I didn't take more money, I couldn't do my job, et cetera, which often leads to income inequality and excessive CEO pay. And it's a horrible situation. But I would suggest to you, it's not only in the context of corporate governance, it's in the context of the fundamental structure of our society, especially a capitalistic society. And while certainly capitalism overall is probably the best method of allowing for human thriving and in growth in many ways, it must be constrained. As an example, we have created a system whereby if a corporate entity fails, oftentimes the government will come to assist them, even though there's been mismanagement or all sorts of unethical, immoral behaviors. So we fundamentally are giving them corporate welfare or corporate socialistic behavior. Yet, if they benefit, then they take all the profit. So on the one hand, failure leads to them taking advantage of the government support and benefiting, and succeeding, the government gets nothing. The other aspect is that, as you probably know, if you're extraordinarily wealthy, you get access to information opportunities that the average person does not. Plus, the degree of your wealth, or combining your wealth with others of great wealth, can actually move markets, or I should say, have markets manipulated, again, to the benefit of the wealthy. If you look at, as an example, the people who attend Davos, who is that? These are the wealthiest capitalists in the world meeting with governments. And what happens is that, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying by Tolstoy. And the quote is, there's a man on your back choking you. He acknowledges he's on your back choking you, but at no time does he ever offer to get off your back and stop choking you. And if you were to create barriers to income inequality, or if you were to limit the ability of some of these extraordinarily wealthy corporations or individuals to make a profit, then they will scream and yell that you're being an oppressor. Yet they have essentially destroyed the middle class and decreased the opportunity for social mobility for the lower classes and the middle class, and have fundamentally become a leech on society. And they've done this also because we have a political system which allows them to make unlimited donations, which motivate politicians to be their slaves in some ways. to actually accept legislation that they have written, and then they attempt to turn into law. So it is a pernicious cycle whereby politicians are motivated not by doing their jobs to benefit their constituency, but by creating situations that oftentimes solely benefit corporate entities. And all of this is done in plain sight, but utilizing narratives that blame the poor, that blame the middle class for their problems. They are not the problem. Fundamentally, the problem is unrestrained, ruthless capitalism and corrupt politicians. Well, it's an extraordinarily complicated problem. I mean, the solution's very easy. Actually, having people motivated to implement the solution is the problem, right? Because there are several things. One is it is very hard for someone to give up their privilege. As an example, if you're the CEO of a company making several $1,000,000 a year, to be told you're not making several $1,000,000 a year seems like you're not being fair or you're being punitive. And I can assure you, every person I have spoken to believes that they deserve their salary that they're getting, and actually even more. I've never met anybody who has said, I'm way overpaid. I should not be being paid this much. In fact, I'm going to give my check back because I'm overpaid. It is not that at all. I think until you actually have consequences for your actions, nothing changes. And that's maybe a sad statement about human behavior, but I would suggest to you that there is a small percentage of people who consistently do the right moral, ethical thing. There is a much larger number of people who, if it will benefit them, they will do it. Now, within that group, there's probably people who would say, well, I'm not going to do anything that hurtful. I'm just going to do enough that I benefit, and hopefully it won't hurt too many people. And then you have the next level, which is, as long as I benefit, I don't care who gets hurt. And we have to have people committed to doing the right thing. It's interesting. There have been studies that have been done in terms of shoplifting. If there is actually a picture of eyes looking at you, as an example, when you are going into a dressing room, the shoplifting rates go dramatically down. And it gets back to the same thing. If you create this omniscient being that can see, then this is a motivator not to do bad things. I think most people are moral and ethical. Most people would like to do the right thing. The challenge, though, is that in a capitalist society, we have created a narrative that there must always be growth and you must always spend more. And as a result of that, we have massive conspicuous consumption, which fuels this growth, but doesn't benefit society and creates people who want and crave. And as a result, this leads to suffering. It leads to their own suffering if they can't achieve that goal, but it also leads to suffering of so many people around them, because when individuals take more than they need, and I don't mean a little bit more, I mean massive amounts more, then that costs other people. As an example, you look at some of the billionaire class. As an example, most recently, Jeff Bezos spent $750 million on a boat, right? That he will not spend the majority of his time that costs probably 20 or 30 million a year to run. And for what? For the pleasure of two people? Or you look at the people who live in, $50, $100 million homes and also own 10 or 20 other homes. And 99% of the time, those other homes sit empty. This is this massive accumulation for ego that benefits no one at the end of the day. And if you look at what those dollars could do, they could have a massive improvement on the lives of so many people, which frankly would give those individuals much more satisfaction than the transient satisfaction that comes with hedonic or hedonistic behavior. So there has to be a completely different lens. Now, while again, I would like to believe most people are inherently good, unfortunately, I think on some level, you actually have to shame some of these people for them to act appropriately. And as much as that may sound bad and denigrate the nature of human beings, I think we historically have seen over and over that when given the opportunity, there's a subset of people who will take and take and take. And I would suggest to you part of that is because of the emptiness they feel inside. In a capitalistic society, we worship power, money, and position. And people believe that if they just have that, they're going to be happy. And so many people strive to obtain those things at whatever cost. The problem is with the people who've done that, it has not filled that emptiness of within themselves. And as a result, they believe that by showing off, by having these gross displays of wealth, that more people will want to be like them and praise them. And then that feeling they get assuages those feelings of emptiness, but never takes that feeling away. And so they're always chasing things that they hope will fill the void. But the void is only filled by being of service to others, by caring for others, by compassion for others. Money is meaningless unless it's given away to benefit others. Listen, I have no problem in the context of living well. But that being said, I give massive amounts of my own wealth away. And as you know, I gave, 99.9% of my wealth away when I had nothing. And once I gave it away, which was $30 million, I was $3 million in the hole. But if you ask me, what did that give me? That made me the richest person in the world, because it wasn't about the money. It was about caring for others. It was about doing things for others. And that allowed me to do more things than I ever thought possible. It allowed me to meet and become friends with some of the greatest spiritual teachers and leaders in the world. It allowed me to be of service to hundreds of thousands, if not more, people in the world. And what could be better than that? Nothing. Chasing after money will only, at the end of the day, make you unhappy. Sure, you may think you're happy, but unless you're doing activities that improve the lives of others, or you're aspiring towards a goal that benefits the world, society, then what you are doing is a waste of everyone's time and is simply an ego exercise. It comes back to selfishness, egoism, and corporate greed. As an example, if you look in the medical profession, in my opinion, medicine should not ever be run by corporate for-profit entities, because profit comes at the cost of everything. And whether that's in regard to time with physicians, whether that's in regard to the ordering of tests, um, they will always choose profit over doing the right thing. And of course, the other side of the coin is that in other quote unquote socialized countries or places that have socialized medicine, enough resources or not enough resources are given to adequately do the job. Plus, by the nature of just frankly limitation on resources, we cannot give Cadillac care to the masses. So we have to have some compromise that allows for the vast majority of people to be cared for, and another system based on the nature of capitalistic society that allows for people who have more resources to, if you will, get Cadillac care versus Ford care. Okay. So, but what we see over and over again is the corporate intrusion into medicine. If you look at emergency rooms, if you look at laboratory, if you look at pathology, if you look at radiology, private equity firms are buying these groups. And oftentimes, when groups are run by, let's say, physicians, they are not as savvy in regard to maximizing profit. So when the private equity group comes in, they typically will first lower the wages. Then they will examine the manner in which billing is done, and then maximize how billing is done, and then create all sorts of mechanisms that support maximizing profits through that billing and decreasing physician pay and decreasing benefits to the physician so that they make a massive profit. And this is being done over and over again, and it's certainly not to the benefit of the patient. So if we were to remove the capitalistic motive, right there you save about 15 to 20%. Plus, when you have, instead of 20 different entities supplying the same type of care, which also creates competition, which also results in greater expenditure of resources, that's another area where there could be massive cost savings. So nothing is more injurious to a physician, or what I would say causes moral injury, than to be in a situation where you have the ability to help someone, but your hands are tied in regard to doing so because you were not given the support that allows you to do that. And this is why medical students are unhappy. This is why the majority of physicians would retire or choose another profession if they had an opportunity. And this is extraordinary, right? Here you have people with the greatest privilege to be of service to others, and they're disappointed in the decision that they've made. So we have to really look and examine how we can create an environment that gives care to all in a fair fashion. And this, I believe, can be done by creating a more thoughtful type of medical care. You know, many of the things we're talking about, if you talk to the right, in the sense of the political right, they will give you the narrative that corporations will do the right thing. They'll give you the narrative that people are lazy. They'll give you the narrative that nobody wants to work, and these are all lies. I don't know anyone who wants to be poor. Certainly, there are mentally ill people who, again, what we did was we closed these institutions, which would help these people to save money by the federal government, and we put them on the street and forced communities to pay for them who were not prepared or did not have the resources to do so. And so we over and over again make decisions that are extraordinarily costly to the benefit of private corporate entities. It's the same with prisons. With the privatization of prisons, we've created a system that it is not beneficial to rehabilitate people. It's not beneficial to keep them out of prison. So we create laws such as the 3 strikes law to incarcerate people for long periods of time. And again, we also have an extraordinarily unfair system that hurts the poor and and minorities. And again, this is not by accident. If you look at white-collar criminals, as an example, we look at the founder of Theranos, here's a woman who stole billions of dollars by actively lying, and she still isn't in prison yet. And we see horrible, horrible actions by individuals that have destroyed lives, that have killed people, and they get a slap on the wrist, while a Black youth who sold marijuana, gets 10 or 15 years in prison. It is outrageous. It's appalling. And, these are actions that are not by accident, by a ruling class of elitists who unfortunately wield the power through the control of money, through the control of government that benefits no one. And they use different media resources to create a narrative that this is because either people are lazy, they don't want to work, or they're immigrants or minorities who are taking away from the average person. These are absolute lies. I've been very critical of some aspects of the world and corporations and countries and governments. At the end of the day, though, most people are good people and want to do the right thing. The challenge for all of us, though, is to be able to stand up and say, I support right action. And that's hard because, unfortunately, for some, it puts them at risk. And most people are afraid of putting themselves or their families at risk. And I appreciate that also. But we must continue to fight for the benefit of all, not just a small percentage of people who have the ability, the resources, the knowledge to manipulate the resources of our world towards themselves. Plus, I think the other thing is we have to be less greedy ourselves in the context of, as an example, the United States uses 25% of the world's resources, yet we make up what, 1/24th of the world's population. This is ridiculous. So we need to, at least in the United States is what I've been primarily talking about, we need to look at how we live. We need to create more sustainable products. We need to create products that can be repaired. We need to look at how we farm plants and animals and create a system that's also just in that context. But everyone, every day, has the ability to improve the life of at least one other person and also create an environment around themselves that allows individuals to prosper.